Hello, and welcome again to the next tour. I'm Ian.
And I'm Andia.
And welcome to episode 6. We are excited for our next guest who is here to talk about transition and military spouse employment. So, Andia, would you please introduce our esteemed guest?
I will. So today we have Andrea Singsaas. So Andrea has been a military spouse for 9.5 years. She is the founder and CEO of the Tyne group. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Great. And it is an executive coaching practice dedicated to helping leaders navigate growth and change through one-on-one coaching and public speaking. I got to warm up my voice this morning. So welcome, Andrea. We're so glad that you're here. We appreciate you chatting with us today. And this is a big topic. I would have to say maybe you and I feel very strongly about this topic. I'm sure you do too, honey.
Exceptionally strong about it, truthfully.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. And we're gonna, please say good morning or good afternoon to whoever's watching.
We're glad to be here too. This is, like you said, it's a really big topic for a lot of people. And I'm excited to meet with you on this podcast because we get to talk about how it impacts the entire family unit and not just the military spouse. I feel like it's often talked about as a siloed topic or a singular issue, but in fact, it has such a large ripple and impact on everything. That's what I'm looking forward to unpacking today, I guess.
Oh, that's excellent. And I really like how you couch that because you're right. The spouse, really is a team and kind of the co-coaches of, when you've got little ones in the mix, or if you're caregivers for parents and so forth and so on, and all of those branches and sequels, if you will, right? So why don't we just go ahead and dive right in? So first question is for me. And as you talk about transitioning affecting the whole family, if you could kind of unpack, a little bit of, what your perspective is on how, and if you forgive me, I'm just going to say, the spouses, how they play a role in transition, understanding that I believe your answer is going to hit on those broader family members that you talked about. So over to you, Andrea.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, military spouses are really involved in the transition process. Maybe not on the front line, so to speak, with regard to job searching, but with everything behind the scenes, with every PCS, with every move. Often it's been the spouse there, sometimes by themselves, navigating the ins and outs and details of what's happening and all the moving parts and pieces. This is a little bit different when you transition because you're talking about your final spot, right? Or at least your spot for now. And you have a little bit more choice, which is interesting. But some of the things that you've, established as your battle rhythm as a spouse during PCS season, those don't leave when you make that ETS or that final move. And so I think that's one part that the spouse plays in the transition process. But I think what veterans or transitioning service members often overlook is how much of a resource their spouse is when it comes to transition. Because spouses have been basically searching for a job, probably not all, but probably more often than not throughout their spouse's active duty. So they have a lot of tips, tricks, resources up their sleeve. And this isn't their first rodeo when it comes to a job search. And so sometimes transitioning service members forget that, or maybe have a little bit too much ego when it comes to that transition, and don't ask maybe the best, closest resource that could help them with that next step in their career, or objectively be able to really talk to them about, all right, well, these are some of your opportunities that you could improve on, maybe these soft skills, or maybe these trends, I've seen these trends with skills that are needed for these sorts of jobs that you're interested in. Spouses know a lot more than we give them credit for sometimes, or the service member gives them credit for, with regard to making that transition or that job search a success.
Oh, for sure. And you hit on a couple of really, interesting points there that I think are worth, kind of highlighting before Andia kind of hits over onto the next question. Because you're right, as the service member who transitioned, when we go through the transition assistance program or all these other things that are designed to help us, it's always that outward look. So to your point, oftentimes we overlook the resource that is nearest and dearest and closest to us. literally the one backing us up or pushing us forward, I think maybe, more accurately in setting us up for success. So I think that that's really excellent. And the other part too, I think it's there, but it wasn't necessarily overstated, is, the job search piece of it, right? When we talk about parity with our civilian counterparts who have done, their whole careers in the civilian piece, establishment of those things, and having that parity of a long resume, perhaps, or, home ownership, for example, oftentimes we don't get to do that until we take that leap into the civilian world. So I think those are some good points to just, kind of overstate, as often as we can, because those are things that are tremendously imperative for success.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Ian first started the job search, right? He was like, "Okay, so LinkedIn, how does this work?" And I was and I was like, "Oh, let me tell you, I have over 500 connections. Now I have like over 1,000." I mean, we're not
comparing.
We're not comparing.
Okay. Yeah. She's still much better than.
But I may have more contacts than him. But you are so right. Like, you should really be looking at the person in your household that's been looking for a job or job searching or, trying to translate skills during, for a very long time, potentially, right? Especially if you're looking at retirement or just transition after a few terms, like, honestly, that is a great resource that you should be using within your household.
And often I've mentored several transitioning service members through American Corporate Partners, through their mentor-mentee program. And one of the first things that I tell them, or I ask them, because they have all happened to be male, is and married or partnered. And I said, what does your spouse or your partner think? Have you sat down across the table, eyeball to eyeball, and had like a real conversation where your spouse or your partner got to voice their choice in what's happening next, not just with your job search, but in all the things that are happening next, because that choice is something that you haven't really ever had complete and total control of. So that's something often also that the spouse has a great opportunity to play a really big role in the transition if it's allowed. And I think that's probably the first biggest misstep in transition that I see happen often is spouses are never asked. When you go through that retirement ceremony, it's really great, and they'll be in that front row. But next week, that's the person that's going to be in the foxhole with you. It's not going to be anybody else. So you better start making some decisions and having those conversations as a pair. So,
all right, service members and veterans, don't let your spouse be an or underutilized resource. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. You've heard it here. Okay, so with all those thoughts, that we've been talking about, how does under and unemployment with a spouse really affect that moment of transition?
Absolutely. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because it's often overlooked, and it's something that nobody's keyed into, right? We often hear about the need for meaningful employment for spouses so that it can better their current financial state, their access to basic needs, improve access to housing, all of the things. If we can, address the spouse employment issue, we can improve all those things present day. But what we're forgetting is the long-term outlook and impact of unemployment and underemployment over the long period of time of an active duty career. And that zero on that side of the balance sheet, or maybe that low number, really does have an impact on financial futures that veterans often overlook, or service members often overlook until they're making that transition. They're finally getting that chance to sit down and meet with their financial guy, whoever that is, and look at the numbers and crunch some numbers and say, okay, this is what I was making. This is what I could potentially make when I get out. And this is what we want to have our future look like in retirement. Well, that gap may be really wide. And the opportunities that a service member has after they transition might be really limited, or their hand might be really forced to take the highest and best paying job, not because they like it, but because they have to make up ground for years of lost income on their partner side. And that's that's not throwing shade at the partner. I say she because 92% of spouses are female, but that partner probably tried their hardest to scrap together whatever they could for a career over that period of time,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't make up for lost retirement savings, even just lost income, having a home, being able to have paid down and have a great amount of equity
Mm-hmm.
in a home. So many things are impacted by that lower number or zero on that side of the balance sheet that you don't think about. And then what is probably hurts my heart the most is if you've raised your hand and volunteered to serve and protect our country for 20 plus years, or who cares, if it's 5, 7, I don't care, whatever. If you did that and then you don't have that choice, that freedom of choice after you get out to do something you really love to do, that's just bonkers crazy to me. And so I think if we can fix the spouse unemployment and unemployment piece of it, or address that, or at least be mindful of it throughout the military journey, it might make the reality check of that transition for what you're going to have to do or need to do in relation to your financial outlook a little less stark than I
Mm-hmm.
think some people realize when they make that move.
Yeah. And I think you really keyed in on something very important, right? The education of looking at the future of transition before it's upon you. And, that's, I think, the tough nut that we're aiming to crack as we, work this endeavor of this podcast series and talk to guests like you and really unpack these things and get them into the hands of, I think, key leaders and decision makers and folks that can have that influence to be those agents of change, to get awareness and education and really the culture to where it becomes important on day one of service, not day one of separation, transition, retirement, whatever. So that's really important. Thanks for highlighting that.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, I mean, I've always thought of it as taking the pressure off right at the time of transition when the military spouse is gainfully employed, right, has benefits or, is building their own retirement system. But thinking about that in the choice scenario, I think is brilliant, really bringing that to light and understanding as that the military spouse is employed. Yes, it takes the pressure off, but it also provides choice for that service member. Such a good point. This should be, really thought of with the end in mind, right? At the beginning. At the beginning of your career, what is the end in mind? Whether that is, like you were saying, 5, 7 years or 25 years or more. And I think that's such a great point. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And we will also, if we are open the aperture and have active duty service members realizing the long-term impacts and implications of unemployment and underemployment of spouses, then we're going to have a lot more advocates that are in the fighting force right now that are working with community leaders. Maybe they are in command and they have a lot more visibility within the community and doing community outreach, working with local leaders that can impact right there, grassroots, the employment opportunities for spouses. Because until we get more advocates actually in the force and saying, hey, this is an issue. This is not just impacting me. This is impacting my, all the service members that are in my, command or whatever. Nobody's going to listen because it's just a spouse issue. And the reality is it's not at all a spouse issue.
Right.
It's also a retention issue. It's also a recruitment issue because guess who's at home with those kids who are technically most likely to become our next generation of the fighting force?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
as a nation who has almost a quarter century of folks who served in a time of war, as those members in those families transition, tapping into those resources and broadening these networks, like what we're doing here today with you through your network, our networks, and really push these things to take root, I think is vital to, how we not only take care of those members and those families after their service, but really, quite frankly, I think as you hit on, set up the next generation to have the right mindset as they go in to take care of our national security on the front end of it, because they know that it's okay to serve and they're going to get taken care of on the back end of it.
Absolutely. So I just want to get a little personal now and talk about you and your own challenges with under and unemployment and your successes and opportunities that brought to you. So I'd love for you to share, some of your own personal journey.
Absolutely. So when my girl's dad, we're now separated, but he had a very busy career. We were moving often, and it impacted my career. And I applied for far more jobs than I thought I should have, considering the amount of education and the experience I had. And I did not think that I was, I did not think that I would ever face unemployment or underemployment. And wow, I was completely wrong. Even when things lined up, the moon and stars in a mom's world where I had childcare lined up, like reasonably priced childcare. I had all of the things in place to support me so that I could work. I was still unable to find meaningful employment that was in alignment with what, I have a master's degree. I have a project management certification. I have alphabet soup behind my name. And I still couldn't seemingly find a role that was a good fit that would work for our life, that would allow us to move and do all the things that we had to do as a family at the time. And so it was really frustrating. And that's when I started speaking up and speaking out and being an advocate on behalf of spouses. That was, oh my gosh, that was 2021. So it's been a while now that I've been speaking up and, stomping my foot, and I'm not speaking any louder, but it turns out more people are listening, which is really great. But it impacted me because eventually, our partnership, our marriage ended. And what was incredibly hard is I had the opportunity, or I took it upon myself because I couldn't find a job. I built a job, and that's how I built the Tyne Group. And I built my own employment opportunities, and I put together contract work or whatever I could so that I could support myself. And you spoke about the opportunity for choice early on. That's another piece of choice that people don't want to talk about and they don't want to address. But sometimes, more often than we'd like to admit, spouses need an opportunity to get out if they need to get out. If your partnership is going to end, and hopefully end amicably, you need to be able to support yourself. And after having so many years of unemployment and underemployment, without having built my own job, that wouldn't have been possible for me. And I know several other spouses that that's the case as well. This is the one piece that is holding them from being able to make a choice that's best for them and their future and their family. So for me, that was kind of a little bit of my journey. I ended up building a job because I couldn't find one. And I think that's really common. And I think it's great. There are some great tools out there that spouses have at their fingertips as far as how to start a business from scratch. But it's not easy. It's
not easy. Right.
And it's something that maybe you can build it in a way that you can take it with you.
Yeah. That's perfect. And if I can kind of segue right into the next question, you really, I think, segued this perfectly when you talk about, being able to leverage tips and resources and things like that. Can you kind of maybe, thread the needle on some of those different, resources that are out there to turn challenges into opportunities? You mentioned, one, for example, that you're an American Corporate Partners mentor, which, as a graduate of that same program, I can't say enough about it, but it's not just for transitioning service members, if I understand correctly.
Correct. I would say the very first thing that a spouse should do if they are facing unemployment and underemployment challenges is you need to check your mindset and know that it's not you. You are absolutely great and amazing as you are. And if you continually let rejection letters and, the automated emails that tell you weren't chosen for that job, get you to a place where you believe that you're not qualified and you're not enough in any respect, we need to change that. That's the first thing that needs to change. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long uphill battle. And I'm here.
I could not love that more, because I've had those. That's such a great point. Man, can it knock you down? And I can't imagine getting them over and over and over again.
It does. I applied for over 200 jobs. I wasn't doing it the right way. I've learned a lot since then, but it does. It gets to you, right? It really gets to you and makes you think, oh my gosh, maybe I am not qualified to be a barista at Starbucks. Maybe I don't, have what it takes to, wear the little headset and take the drive-through order. Maybe it's too much for me, whatever it is. I am sure every spouse has faced it in some way, shape, or form. But first of all, check your mindset and know that you are indeed enough, and you're talented, and you're capable, and you are resourceful, and you have more skills than most civilians with regard to change, transition, resilience, leadership, so many different skills that you bring to the table. So that's first. Second, as far as the next things you need to do is don't be afraid to dig around. Like, we are super sleuths with regard to moving to a new duty station, right? We know where the best drive-through coffee place is. We know who the hair lady is that does the bailage. And we know that the daycare line is at least 6 months long to get our kid in. So this other place is actually pretty good, but maybe not quite as good, but that can get us in next week. We have that all figured out within minutes of having, our orders actually in front of us that are real, right? So take those skills and look around, use those skills to benefit you, not just your family. So my top things, I do like ACP as their mentor program. My first protege was actually a military spouse, a foreign-born military spouse. She was fabulous. So definitely take advantage of that. I would also say Bunker Labs has paired with the Institute of Military, Family, and Veterans, IMVF families.
IVMF at Syracuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are some great resources there as
absolutely
starting a business or learning more about entrepreneurship, if that's something that is in your future or something that you would really like to do. Likewise, AMSI has been an organization that I've been a part of. I was a chapter lead for it at our last duty station. AMSI is an organization that is dedicated to military spouses building their careers, giving them some opportunities, resources, but then mostly, probably one of the greatest things I gained from that was the community. You've realized that you're not alone, especially entrepreneurship is a lonely, lonely endeavor. If you choose to go that route, that provides you a whole community of other spouses that are building something for themselves and their family. So that's really great. Otherwise, as far as just developing, keep in mind, you do not have to keep getting every certification out there. That's my other tip or trick. There are tons of great resources out there for spouses to get maybe their PMP certification, Six Sigma, all those different things at little or no cost to them, or even other certification programs like utilizing some MyCAA or MySeco funding. But that's for certain ranks, right? But before you use any of those opportunities or those benefits, know for sure what you want to do. Don't just chase the money. Figure out, check with yourself what you truly want to do. Otherwise, you're going to run out of gas running for it, because it's hard. It's an uphill thing. So you have to really, truly want it and know what your why is, why you want it, before you just jump towards it. Because it's kind of like that ready, fire, aim sort of situation. Exactly how it's supposed to go. I don't think, Ian, you can check me on that, but I think it's
100%.
So
that's right.
100% wrong.
And we will share a lot of these resources in the show notes. I know the National Military Family Association, also the Military Officers Association of America, they have scholarships as well. So I think, to your point, know what your passion is, and then look at what would help that out along the way. And so we'll definitely share all of those resources that you mentioned, so that we can make sure that people have somewhere to go if they want to take you up on those resources and tips. So
hit the website. It'll be in the show notes, and we'll link everything that was talked about here today.
Absolutely.
Definitely
Yeah.
so. And by the way, your first point in that last question totally underscored like why I absolutely believe that you are an outstanding coach. I'm a believer. You got me. So very well done. And those that are looking for those leadership and coaching pieces, please, look Andrea up and the Tyne group, and I'm sure she can get you exceptionally polished and ready to knock that out of the park. So, okay, well, that was an excellent, excellent episode. And I think we could spend days here kind of unpacking, what all of this means, the spouse piece, the familial unit aspect of transition. So kind of to that end, it's time to have a little bit of fun. So I get to ask you a couple of questions for our first game. We call it What's in Your Rucksack. So it's kind of a two-part piece. First off, there's all these different tools that we've got in this rucksack, as we call, life, right? So from your time as a military spouse and your time seeing, what the uniform service is all about, what would be something that you would carry forward with you or that you have carried forward with you in your current life? And then what's something that you absolutely would dump or you have gotten rid of because you don't not want it or need it in where you're at now?
Ooh. So mine are interrelated. And I think what I would definitely keep and have kept carrying forward and hope to forever is my ability to navigate change, my ability to withstand, weather, and thrive in periods of transition or change. I think all military families, spouses, service members, and children develop that over time. And I think that is not a skill that is for the faint of heart. I think it is one that is not inherent. I think it is hard, but I think at some degree we all have that. And it's something hopefully you carry with you over time. That said, what would I leave behind? I would leave behind the anxiety that comes with uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And so that's the uncertainty is also a part of that change sometimes, or the uncertainty of, is your service member going to come home from this, deployment? Is, whatever it may be, are we getting reassigned next year? Is my service member going to make the next rank, or is our career going to be done? Are we going to get picked up for a school slot and have to do the triple threat move, bang, right in a row? You don't know. So that uncertainty part, I would like to leave behind and be a little bit more of the author in my own story.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. And because you can't have the first one without the second one.
You can't.
But it's really fascinating as you say this, our pieces that we were going to carry forward and of course leave behind have that interrelated piece of it too. And I really love that theme of that. So excellent advice out there. And I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so now I get to do the fun part of the two truths and a lie. So on our last episode, we had a good friend of mine, Lila Quintiliani, who works for the Military Officers Association of America. And she's a veteran herself. And so hers all come from her time as a veteran and military spouse both. So during a field problem at the Combat Maneuver Training Center in Germany, a wild boar ate her MRE, a chicken a la king MRE. So that's number one. Number two is she drove a personal vehicle through a minefield in Croatia. And number three was that she was a platoon leader for an all-male recon platoon back in the 1990s. So which is the lie?
I think the platoon leader one is the lie.
It's not. I know. That's the one I guessed too. But no, it was actually that a wild boar ate her MRE. Yeah. That was the lie. It seemed very plausible to us, but that was actually the lie.
Stationed in Tucson, the javelina will eat anything.
Javelina, yes.
Yeah. So,
totally plausible, right? Yeah. Plus, it was a plausible chicken. I mean, who doesn't want chicken, right? Andrea, now it is your turn for your two truths and a lie,
where we'll reveal the lie on our next episode of The Next Tour.
That's right.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Two truths and a lie. I do not enjoy the beach. I have been a teacher on a cruise ship, and I was on a water ski team.
Ooh, wow.
I know.
That's very diverse. I'm interested to reveal that answer on our next episode. Very excellent. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you so much for being here today. Like I said at the very beginning, this is a super important topic to both you and I, and also our, active counterparts who can be great advocates for us if we've learned anything today. So thank you so much for being here with us on the next tour.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next time. Very inspirational, Andrea. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
The views, opinions, and advice expressed by our guest on the next tour are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and Andia or any affiliated organizations. While we strive to provide helpful and accurate information, this podcast is for informational purposes only. We encourage listeners to consult with professionals or conduct their own research before making any significant decisions related to military transition or post-service life. The content is intended as guidance and personal perspective, not as official advice.